The Red Book, originally titled Liber Novus, was written by Carl Jung between 1913 and 1930, though he kept refining it for years afterward. It records his personal descent into the unconscious, a period he called his confrontation with the soul. During these years, Jung experienced powerful visions, dreams, and dialogues that he carefully recorded first in his private journals, the Black Books, and later transcribed and illustrated by hand into the Red Book. The text is not a theory or academic work. It's a spiritual and psychological journey where Jung explores the symbolic world of the psyche. Through visionary encounters with figures like Elijah, Salome, Philemon, and others, he discovers the foundations of what later became his major concepts: the collective unconscious, archetypes, individuation, and the self. It remained unpublished and hidden for nearly a century, locked in a family vault, until 2009, when it was finally released to the world. In essence, the Red Book is Jung's record of his inner initiation, a descent into chaos that revealed the mythic structure of the human soul. Part 1. The Descent. In 1913, Carl Jung began to dream of blood, not a symbol, not a metaphor, actual rivers of blood, swelling and rising across the lands of Europe. In one vision, he saw the entire continent drowned beneath it. He wrote later that the images burst forth from the unconscious and threatened to overwhelm me. Yet he chose not to turn away. I had to find the meaning of my own myth, he said, for I knew that only by understanding what was happening within me could I remain whole. That winter he began what he called the descent into the depths. Every evening, when his household slept, Jung sat alone in his study, closed his eyes, and waited. He allowed his imagination to open and to move freely, no longer bound by analysis or theory. He called this experiment active imagination. I let myself drop, he wrote, as one lets oneself drop into the sea. I let myself fall into what is below, trusting that I will find the ground. At first there was darkness, and then movement. The air grew heavy, the light turned crimson. He found himself walking in a vast red desert beneath a sky the color of rust. Nothing moved, and the silence felt eternal. He walked for what seemed like days until the horizon broke open into a chasm filled with water. A flood was coming. He stood on the edge and saw the tide rise with the weight of human suffering. I heard a voice say to me, "What you see is about to come to pass." He would later learn that this vision occurred months before the First World War began. After the flood receded, the desert returned. The sand shimmered like metal under the dimming sun. There, he met a figure, a tall old man with the beard of a prophet. By his side stood a young woman whose eyes were covered by a white band of cloth, and beside them both a serpent coiled upon the ground. Jung asked who they were. "I am Elijah," said the old man, "the prophet of old. The woman is my daughter, Salome. The serpent belongs to her, as wisdom belongs to blindness." The scene struck him with terror and reverence. Elijah spoke calmly, while Salome smiled through her blindness. The serpent raised its head and watched him. He felt divided between repulsion and fascination. He wanted to flee, yet he could not move. In the Red Book, he wrote of this meeting, "I stood before Elijah, and he said, 'What do you seek here?' I answered, 'I do not know. I have lost the way.' He said, 'The way is within you.'" Salome stepped forward. Her voice was soft but sure. "I love you," she said. Jung was horrified. "I am no Christ," he shouted. She smiled. "You will become him." He understood that she spoke not of divinity, but of transformation. She was the soul's desire for unity, the longing to be whole, to join light with shadow. The serpent that coiled between them was the instinct that binds heaven to earth. He wrote afterward, "Salome is my soul, and the serpent is her wisdom. I must accept them both, or lose myself." The desert grew darker, the three figures faded, and he found himself alone. He heard the sound of wings, then silence again. He awoke trembling, but with a strange certainty. Something immense had begun. Night after night, he returned to the inner world. The visions deepened. He descended into caves, crossed rivers, met spirits and gods, and argued with them. Some praised him, others mocked him. He began to see that each represented a fragment of his own being. "Everything in the unconscious seeks outward manifestation," he wrote. The inner world must become real to the outer man, otherwise he will fall into emptiness. He recorded every image, every dialogue, in a large leather-bound book. He painted in vivid colors, the desert, the serpents, the sun, and a series of circular symbols that would later evolve into his mandalas. One night he met the figure of a scholar, clothed in robes, carrying a lamp that gave no light. The man said, "I am the spirit of this time." He spoke of logic, reason, and progress, and told Jung that his visions were meaningless. Jung answered, "Your clarity is blindness. The soul does not speak in your language." When he woke, he understood that humanity was ruled by that spirit, the worship of intellect. But beneath it waited another, older power. He called it the spirit of the depths. The spirit of the time, he wrote, tells you to strive for clarity and usefulness. But the spirit of the depths says, listen to the voice that comes from the dark. The next vision began in a barren field. A black serpent slithered toward him and coiled around his body. He felt its scales press against his skin. Terror rose, but he resisted the urge to fight. Then the serpent's head rested on his heart, and its tongue flickered against his neck. I felt the spirit of the earth enter me, he wrote. I knew that the serpent was my brother. After that, he no longer despised instinct or fear. He saw that the wisdom of the depths speaks through images, sensations, and even sickness. The God becomes sickness, he said, when he is not recognized. Days passed like months. The outer world dimmed. He began to see faces in ordinary things, the patterns of rugs, the grain of wood, the play of light on the wall. He was aware of crossing a line few have dared to cross, into a world that lives inside every human being, yet remains unseen. He met more figures. An anchorite who guarded a desert temple, a giant black snake that devoured itself, a laughing demon who called himself the Red One. The Red One mocked his seriousness and told him that holiness without passion is only vanity. You must learn the worth of laughter, the Red One said. You need sin and joy, fire and blood. Without them, you are only half alive. These encounters tore him between fear and fascination. He felt at times as if he were dying, at times reborn. The spirit of the depths, he wrote, took my understanding and all my knowledge and placed them beneath my feet. For the first time in his life, the man of reason surrendered to mystery. He began to sense that the figures he met were not his inventions. They were independent, autonomous, living beings within the psyche, what he would later call archetypes. But the Red Book was not theory, it was revelation through experience. He confessed, I learned that I must be alone with these images. No one can help me. I must find the meaning that belongs to me. The descent lasted months. He lost the feeling of ordinary time. He said, I lived in two worlds, one visible and one invisible, and the invisible was more real. And yet, he continued to write, paint, and return, night after night, to the place of visions. My soul, he wrote, leads me into the desert, into the solitude of the eternal, where no one follows. That solitude would not destroy him. It would become the crucible of everything he would later give to the world. Part 2. The Teachers of the Depths. The desert withdrew, and in its place rose a dark forest. The air was dense, full of whispering shapes. Jung wrote that he felt as if the roots of the world were breathing beneath his feet. The serpent that had coiled around him before now moved ahead like a guide, parting the shadows. He heard laughter, sharp, unholy, alive. From behind a tree stepped a red-haired man with eyes like embers. His clothes shimmered like scales. I am the Red One, the stranger said. You have met prophets and saints. Now meet joy. They have taught you reverence. I will teach you play. Jung demanded to know whether he was the devil. The Red One only smiled. If it pleases you to call me that, do so. But remember, the devil is the warmth of life that the pious fear. Jung answered, I cannot follow you. You lead to sin. The Red One replied, without sin, there is no understanding. You have filled your mind with holy thoughts, and now you starve for laughter. You must eat of every fruit, not only the clean ones. In the Red Book, he wrote afterward, the Red One said, you need sin and joy, fire and blood. Without them, you are only half alive. I was ashamed, yet I knew he spoke the truth. The Red One led him to a village hidden within the forest, where people danced around fires. Their laughter rang through the trees. Jung watched in silence until the Red One whispered, "Join them." He refused. "I cannot." "Then you will never be free," the Red One said, and disappeared into smoke. When the vision faded, Jung felt an emptiness greater than fear. He realized that his strict morality had separated him from the full experience of being human. "The gods of form," he wrote, "are satisfied with sacrifice, but the God that comes demands wholeness." After this, new figures appeared, some radiant, some grotesque. He met a giant called Izdubar, a hero from Babylonian myth. Izdubar's body burned with divine fire, yet he stumbled, blinded by his own light. Jung saw that the god of ancient power was sick, unable to live in the new age of reason. "Izdubar," he wrote, "was the image of the old god, whom we have slain with our understanding." He tried to help the fallen giant. In the vision, Jung built a house for him and tended to his wounds. The god shrank, becoming smaller, until he could fit inside an egg that Jung carried in his hands. "I laid the god in the egg," he wrote, "and kept him warm with the breath of my life." He understood the meaning only later, that the gods now live within the human soul. "Man must carry the god in himself," he wrote, "otherwise the god will die in the world." From that moment his task changed. He was no longer merely a witness, he had become a participant in the rebirth of divinity. "The god has died in me," he wrote, "and I was the murderer. Yet I also became the womb of his resurrection." The descent deepened. He found himself walking through the corridors of an immense house filled with mirrors. In each mirror appeared a different face, some his own, others unfamiliar. One was a warrior, another a child, another a hermit, another a madman with eyes of flame. When he tried to pass, the reflection stepped out from the glass and surrounded him. He asked, "Who are you?" They answered in one voice, "We are your many faces. You have lived only one of us, the rest demand life." He trembled and cried out, "But I cannot live you all." A voice replied, "Then you will live none of us." In the Red Book he recorded, "I learned that I am not one person, but the sum of many who seek expression. The self that I know is only a door through which the multitude passes." He saw that sanity does not mean simplicity, it means balance between countless inner worlds. During these nights he often argued with his soul. Sometimes she guided him gently, sometimes she tormented him. She told him, "You wish to know everything, but you do not wish to become." He answered, "Teach me then." She said, "First, unlearn." When his resistance weakened, another figure appeared, an old man with blue wings in the calm of eternal sky. His beard was white, his eyes filled with depth. This was Philemon. Philemon, Jung wrote, represented superior insight. He was a teacher of wisdom. He showed me that there are things in the psyche that I do not make, but which make themselves. Philemon spoke in sentences that shimmered with paradox. "You believe that thoughts are yours," he said, "but they live in the air around you, as birds live in the trees. You are only the perch on which they rest." Jung listened and began to understand that imagination was not fantasy, but revelation. The inner world was not less real than the outer. It was another field of existence. "Reality is both," he wrote, "that which acts upon me from without, and that which moves me from within." He asked Philemon, "How can I distinguish truth from illusion?" Philemon answered, "Truth is what transforms you. What leaves you unchanged is only opinion." From then on, Philemon became his constant companion. Jung saw him often in the garden outside his house in Kusnacht. The old man appeared beside him, walking slowly, sometimes speaking, sometimes only looking toward the sky. "He said things that I had never consciously thought," Jung later wrote, "and I knew that he was more than a dream." In one vision, Philemon held a small bird in his hand and said, "Look how it trusts. That is how your thoughts should rest in the hand of God." Through these encounters, Jung learned to respect what he could not control. He realized that the psyche is an autonomous universe, and the ego only one of its inhabitants. "The soul," he wrote, "is older than you. It teaches you the language of what was before." Yet Philemon also warned him, "Do not become proud of your discoveries. The abyss will swallow those who believe they are masters of it." The warning proved true. One night, Jung saw himself standing before an immense black door. He heard a cry behind it, like a wounded animal. He opened the door and saw his own shadow, dark, distorted, and furious. The figure shouted, "Why do you deny me? You speak of the depths and still refuse my face." Jung recoiled, but Philemon said, "Do not flee. greet him. He forced himself to look. The shadow's eyes were his own. He stepped forward and embraced it. The darkness melted into him like smoke. He fell to the ground, exhausted but whole. I understood, he wrote, that the devil is the brother of the angel, and that he too was necessary for my completeness. After that night, he began to see circles everywhere. Halos, wheels, suns, mandalas. The circle, he wrote, is the symbol of the self. In it, all opposites unite. What was scattered becomes whole. He painted these mandalas obsessively, sometimes for days, sometimes weeks. Each was a reflection of his inner order. When the designs broke, he knew that his equilibrium was lost. When they grew symmetrical, he felt harmony returning. The mandala is the vessel of transformation, he wrote. It is the path of individuation, the expression of what the soul knows. His soul then told him, "You have seen the teachers of the depths, Elijah, Salome, the serpent, the red one, Isdubar, Philemon. Each gave you a gift and a wound. Now you must return and live what you have learned." He resisted. "I cannot return. The outer world is pale beside this." His soul replied, "The inner world is not your home. It is your origin. You must bring its fire back to earth." He understood. The descent was never meant as escape. It was initiation. "I learned," he wrote, "that one must go through the darkness to find the light. But the light is not above. It is born in the depth itself." Part 3. The Return. When the visions had burned themselves into stillness, Jung felt an ache of emptiness. The desert, the forests, the serpents, and the gods all receded. What remained was silence, vast and almost unbearable. He feared that the depths had abandoned him, but the voice of his soul whispered, "You are being born back into the world." He realized that the descent had been a death. "The spirit of the depths has taken my understanding and all my knowledge and placed them beneath my feet," he wrote. "I died with the dying gods, yet I live again." The silence that followed was not absence but gestation. Out of it rose a new form of awareness. He began to see the opposites he had struggled with, reason and madness, spirit and flesh, heaven and earth, not as enemies but as halves of one law. "Life," he wrote, "is a continual dance between creation and destruction. To love only one side is to love half of life." Philemon appeared again in a field of blue light. Around him flew white birds, each feather burning like a small flame. "You have learned to see the images," Philemon said, "but now you must learn to live them." "To understand is not enough," Jung asked. "How does one live a vision?" Philemon answered, "By letting it breathe through ordinary things. Do not cling to the extraordinary. The divine seeks incarnation." Jung took these words to heart. He returned to his patients with new eyes. He no longer saw their dreams as puzzles to be solved, but as messages from the same depths he had walked through. "Each human being," he wrote, "contains the entire human story." In the following visions, he found himself standing on the shore of an endless sea. Out of the water rose a white sun, brighter than day, and within it he saw the outline of a face, not a god of old, but something new and human. "It was as if the light had become flesh," he wrote, "and I knew that this was the rebirth of God in the soul of man." He understood now what the death of the old gods had meant. They had not perished. They had changed form. They no longer ruled from heaven. They sought to live through the consciousness of humankind. "The new God is born in the depths," he wrote, "not above, but within. He needs man to realize himself." This revelation filled him with awe and dread. The burden of divinity had passed to humanity. "He who carries the God within must suffer his contradictions," he said. "To bear the opposites is the cross." He saw a vision of a great tree whose roots pierced the underworld while its branches touched the stars. Around it coiled the serpent, and in its trunk a door opened, leading to the heart of the world. He stepped through and found a flame burning in stillness. The fire said, "I am the life that always becomes. You are my vessel." He bowed before it. "I saw," he wrote, "that the center of all things is a living flame. It is the same in every human being, but most have forgotten it." From this experience he drew the final teaching of the Red Book, that salvation is not found by fleeing the world, but by reconciling with it. "The soul needs the body as much as the spirit needs matter," he wrote. His soul asked him, "What have you learned?" He answered, "That I must believe in my soul." She said, "And what is your soul?" He replied, a small light in the great darkness, she said. Then guard it, for it is the light of the world. After this, Philemon appeared less often. Jung sensed that his teacher was withdrawing. Philemon said, "You no longer need me, as before. The wisdom you sought outside must now grow within you." He asked, "Will I see you again?" Philemon smiled, "Whenever you remember that you do not know." Then he faded into the air like smoke into sunlight. The absence left a calm sorrow. Jung knew that the journey had reached its turning point. He had walked through death, madness, temptation, and revelation, and had found in all of them a single truth, that the psyche is the world, and the world the psyche. He wrote, "Man's task is to become conscious of the contents that press upward from the unconscious. The treasure lies in the dark." One last vision came to him, a temple rising from the earth, built not of stone, but of living light. Inside, he saw the same figures who had accompanied him through the journey: Elijah and Salome, the serpent, the red one, Isdubar, and Philemon. They stood together, silent, radiant, and whole. His soul said, "Do you understand?" He said, "I think so, that they are all one." She said, "And who is that one?" He hesitated, then answered, "It is myself." "You have said it," she replied, "but do not forget, the self is larger than you. You are its vessel, not its owner." The temple dissolved, and he stood again in the ordinary daylight of his study. On his desk lay the red book, open to a blank page. He took his pen and wrote, "The meaning of my existence is that life has spoken to me, and I must translate it so that it does not remain mute." He continued filling the pages with dialogues and images for years. He painted mandalas of gold and blue, dragons, suns, towers, and trees, maps of his own inner world. Each was a portrait of the same mystery, the birth of the self, yet he knew the book could never be finished. "The work is endless," he wrote, "for the soul is an infinite sea." He sealed the manuscript and placed it away, saying that it was not for his time to understand. The experience had transformed him completely. The man who once sought to explain the psyche now bowed before its mystery. "I am not a scientist of the soul," he said. "I am its servant." He left the last pages of the Red Book with these words: "The God seeks human understanding and works in the depths of the soul. Whoever follows him will become a creator of the world, for the world is born anew each time a soul becomes whole." When he emerged from those years of solitude, the world was at war, but he no longer feared its chaos. He had found within himself the pattern that endures beneath destruction. He wrote, "What was revealed to me is timeless. I learned that what we call the unconscious is not only human, but cosmic. In it moves the history of all that has been and all that will be. From that knowledge came peace." He no longer sought to banish darkness or cling to light. He walked between them, carrying the awareness that both were faces of the same truth. "The soul," he said, "is God's messenger in man. To hear her voice is to hear the divine." Thus, the descent that began in fear ended in understanding. Jung had faced the flood, the desert, the prophets, the demons, and the gods, and had discovered that they were all parts of himself. Through them, he had learned that the true center of the psyche is not the ego, but the self, the living flame that unites opposites and gives meaning to existence. "He who looks outside dreams," he wrote. "He who looks inside awakes." And so he awoke. He called his journey the most important experience of his life, the foundation of everything he would later teach. Yet he warned that no one should imitate it blindly. "The way," he said, "is unique for each soul. Mine is not yours. But every person must someday descend into their own depths and face what waits there." That is the legacy of the Red Book. Not a doctrine, but a mirror. Not a map, but an invitation. It shows that beneath the surface of consciousness lives a vast and ancient world where the gods, forgotten by time, still speak in dreams. Whoever dares to listen may hear the same voice that called to Jung in 1913. "My soul, where are you? Do you hear me? I speak, I call you. Are you there?" The answer, he discovered, comes only when we have the courage to descend and to return.